books that are both timely and timeless. When reading too many manuscripts make her cross-eyed, she switches to audiobooks in her non-stop quest to decode bestsellers. I request you all to please welcome them with a round of applause.
Hello, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all to this session with the brilliant, full of much needed information, Deepa Kannan, the author of this phenomenal book, How to Sleep Better, which, by the way, has been shortlisted for the Pen and Paper Awards. So, huge round of applause. So in this book, Deepa combines the ancient wisdom of Ayurveda with modern science to address one of the most essential yet often overlooked pillars of health, and that is sleep. So let us dive in straight into this book. Deepa, congratulations on writing this stellar book. I loved reading it, getting surprised by it. It's informative, it's anecdotal, it's personal, not at all dry like some of the non-fiction titles on such topics can end up being. So tell us about your journey. What inspired you to write this book?
First of all, thank you all for being here on a Sunday. And I just want to say I came to Bangalore in 2000 and I didn't know a soul and I didn't have an occupation, and Bangalore gifted me the language of yoga, Ayurveda, functional medicine, and it is this city that has made me who I am, and that is what has birthed this book. And I think it's really something destined that today is the first birthday of the book, and we are here celebrating Bangalore and celebrating books. So the journey is very long, and Rashmi, I don't really want to go into too much of that because I think we should reserve our time for the information. But very quick, short story about the journey to the book was, I would say, in Bangalore, I also, probably my life reached rock bottom. I didn't have a job. I got divorced. And then after I got married again, my son was born with this very rare adrenal disorder where a few weeks old, he had turned dark before my eyes and he looked like he was going to die. And when we reached the hospital, they said that if you had come 2 hours later, he would have passed away. So he's a steroid dependent but very normal tantrum throwing teenager today, and I think it was in the process of trying to help Omkar, that's his name, that I got into asking the doctor, does food play a role, does nutrition play a role in helping these kids? And of course the doctor would say food has nothing to do with any of this. So obviously stubborn me didn't want to accept that, and that's how I got into nutrition and then this fascinating world of functional medicine, which is very cutting edge and looks at the body as this interconnected whole rather than isolated parts, which is also what Ayurveda does. But the reason I came back to Ayurveda later after functional medicine was that I saw a lot of people in functional medicine talking about how certain practices from ancient India were not evidence backed. And that really got me furious because, I mean, you are constantly borrowing from ancient Indian wisdom and taking it out there with no credit to India because we are not big on patenting what we have. We are all about sharing knowledge everywhere and all over the world. So I came back to Ayurveda to complete that circle of the journey, and I didn't want to polarize science and ancient wisdom. So I really wanted to create that synergy, and everybody in functional medicine was saying, to be healthy, you need to have good sleep, but nobody was really looking at personalizing sleep. Like, obviously, the challenges that affect you and me could be very different. So how do we create frameworks and principles that each of us can utilize in a way where we can adapt that to our unique body? And that's how this book was birthed. And we'll surely talk about the unique aspect of the book.
As you can see, this book comes from a very personal space, and that is why it is so sincerely written. It really touches your heart, and that's why I find this book very, very beautiful. So tell us, Deepa, tell us more about what is happening in the space of sleep and how this book is different. Why should people read your book?
I think that I didn't really understand how unique it was until the book itself was published, because when I started to put it out there, the very first review on Goodreads was by somebody who said that I bought the book and I realized it was Ayurveda, so it's cuckoo science. So I put it aside and I felt this is not a science book. And it just got me really upset that if you look at psychology as an example, we're talking about so many mental health challenges today, anxiety, depression, a lot of people on medication. And when we look at this space of psychology and mental illness, I know we're going a little off track, but just to highlight what I'm saying is that psychology, after all the research and the science, has invented nothing for mental health apart from medication. And even they are borrowing the tools from ancient wisdom. When you say use the power of the breath to regulate the nervous system, use breath work. So ultimately, we are all borrowing from ancient wisdom, again, without giving any credit to it. So really, the book was about how do we get the gist of all this ancient wisdom, but in a way where we're also quoting some of the science so that we allow the information to reach, because obviously if we start to get into arguments, we're not going to win the war. So we want to be able to speak the language of the skeptics, and we need to do that in a way where we do offer the science, where we bring the two together so that we can take the information out and make it something that everybody can hold for themselves in a way that feels valid to them.
So, yeah, that's what I was also thinking. I love the holistic approach
And
that you've taken.
one more, Rashmi, just if I may, is that, for me, something really I felt validated, and I know we shouldn't be looking for validation, but there was a triple board certified sleep physician in the US who, after reading my book, said that I made notes on your book, and it was as if I had got a textbook on sleep. And for me, it was like really a moment where I got tears in my eyes, because I felt that, this is eventually what we're trying to do. Because let's not get boxed into, is the person an MD? Because so many people have great knowledge, and I would really encourage everybody to look at the message rather than the messenger, because sometimes we get caught up in these titles, and that prevents us from taking the information which might be helpful to us.
Certainly. And I love the way you blended science with Ayurveda. I particularly like the concept of the 10 senses, the Indriyas. So if you could please take the audience through it. It's a very interesting concept.
Yeah. So the 10 Indriyas are spoken about in books of yoga, Ayurveda, and again, when I was interviewed by 2 or 3 people in the West, all of them asked me, it's so interesting you made up these 10 senses, because, we have only 5 senses and you made it up. Because there's just no knowledge of these 10 senses. So it was as vague as me walking around a house one day, and I told my husband that it would be so interesting if somebody were to look at sleep through the lens of these 10 Indriyas. And he just said, so why don't you write a book? And of course, that long story there, but for a long time I just said, I'm not a millionaire's wife to have time to write books. But he pushed me, and that's how the book was birthed. So the 10 Indriyas are these ancient concepts that we've got the 5 senses, sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, and then we have 5 karma Indriyas, which are the senses of action. So we've got the rectum, which I've looked at as the whole detoxification system, and I discovered how the liver issues. You know, we have so many fatty liver issues today, liver challenges, and how sleep disruption is very closely intertwined with this. Then, of course, the genitals, I looked at it in the form of the whole urinary system and the whole reproductive system. For example, men with prostate issues can't last through the whole night because you're constantly awakening to use the restroom. And similarly, women with incontinence or urinary challenges, and also a big role of how low testosterone, low progesterone, all of this impacts sleep. Then, of course, movement. The legs are the sense organ which allow us to have locomotion, movement. So, how exercise is intertwined with sleep, how there's something called brain-derived neurotropic factor, where when we do exercise, our brain releases this BDNF, which is almost like growth hormone for the brain, but BDNF is also required for us to have slow wave sleep. And then, of course, the hands, and we're going to talk a little bit about the hands because that's Rashmi's favorite section, so I'll save that for a little later. And finally, the mouth, which is the sense organ of speech, but which is intertwined with thyroid health. So that's a very quick, I mean, the 10 senses is really very, very deep, and it's a framework. It's a framework by which I've teased apart sleep from both perspectives of science and Ayurveda.
Okay, so let's address some common concerns. Tell us about some very common mistakes that most of us make, things that we think we are doing right, but actually we're doing wrong.
I think the biggest challenges of mistakes when it comes to sleep is first that we think we're all the same, and when we hear that sleep hygiene, cleaning up the room, then we hear about a particular magical sleep temperature that if you set your bedroom at that temperature, you're bound to have sleep. And we're not recognizing that we're all extremely unique and nuanced, and each of us is very different. The second is, I commonly hear a lot of clients come to me who've said that even doctors have said just take a sleeping pill, and really it is so addictive, and it took me 8 months to wean somebody off sleeping pills who had been put on a medication typically given for schizophrenia to help him sleep, and he had been to 3 sleep physicians and he was still not sleeping after taking this strong drug, and it took me 8 months to wean him off of this drug and then have him sleeping properly. So I think that I mean, there is so many, we are all quick to pop pills and we don't realize how addictive it is. And definitely not the common advice you'll hear from friends, which again is down a glass of wine and follow it up with a sleeping pill. That's such a dangerous combination. And the final thing I think is that even sleep physicians are talking a lot about what you eat at dinner, so foods with tryptophan, and it's not as simple as that. So the magical sleep plate begins at breakfast. So whatever is eaten at breakfast decides the cascade of blood sugar right through the day, which then culminates in your ability to fall asleep. And of course, I think using stress coping tools as SOS versus laying a foundation. So, you know, it's very common to hear people who say that I've been using your breath work, I'm so stressed and nothing's happening. If you're going to wait till your heart is racing and then try to do these things, it's not going to help. So why do we do breath work? For example, ancient wisdom had this thing of holding the breath, whether it's alternate nostril breath, and whenever you hold the breath, you're creating a very similar situation in the body that occurs physiologically when you're under high stress. So you're training the body and the nervous system to start coping with higher levels of stress. So you do these things to prepare the body for that time of high stress. So you don't wait until you're stressed and then try to hack your way through it. So I think, I mean, there are so many other mistakes, Rashmi, but for sure I would say these are the main.
I think you also mentioned, like, most of us believe one must have a heavy breakfast, but you
Yes.
mentioned no, that is not required.
Yeah, so Ayurveda has this belief that Agni is, we think about it as just digestive fire, but it's a lot more. So Agni is what transforms the food into energy in the cells. Agni is what does everything. So Agni has a bell curve, which means imagine if you've ever seen a bonfire which was lit at night, and then the next day if you go to it, there's just those embers flickering, right? So you don't go and throw a massive meal at that because it doesn't have the power to digest. So you kindle the fire with a very tiny breakfast, and then it's like you're pouring ghee into the bonfire and stoking it. Then you prepare the fire for this massive meal, which is lunch, which should be the main meal of the day, and then you finish as close to sunset as possible with a medium-sized meal, so you have enough time for the body to start naturally down-regulating the nervous system and calming down and just preparing itself to fall asleep. So I think on that note, Rashmi, the main problem I see is those who are having dinner at 10 p.m., the heaviest meal of the day, because a lot of us do that if we are going out to work. We don't really see what we are eating when we're outside, and then when we reach home at dinner, we've got this massive dinner, heaviest ingredients of the day, and then we're just not able to fall asleep.
So, for the audience, I wanted to tell you that
Hands give blessings and symbolize strength and generosity. It is used to seal friendship. Placing your hands on someone or something can mean blessing or healing. Raising your hand can mean honesty. Hands on your heart can mean adoration or gratitude. Two hands coming together can symbolize peace and friendship.
tell us a little more.
So you might wonder why we are reading a section about the symbolism of the hands. Now in Ayurveda, that when you have pain, you've heard a lot about arthritis, fibromyalgia, where you get pain in the hands. In Ayurveda, the reason behind any pain, not just in the hands but anywhere in the body, is what is called high vata dosha. And it is also high vata dosha that is the reason for sleep challenges. So science found that areas in the brain that control pain also regulate sleep. And Ayurveda knew that pain and sleep disruption came from the same source.
Very informative. It was quite an eye-opener to read this. So another issue that plagues most Indians, especially women, is thyroid. You talk a lot about it in your book. Please tell us how sleep and thyroid are connected.
I think thyroid is something which is, we have to wonder why so many people are getting thyroid issues today, and there's lot of link between thyroid and sleep. It can be that if it's thyroid is hyperactive, then you're not able to slow down the heart rate. You're sort of in an overactivated state. And of course, if the thyroid is sluggish, you can feel tired even if you've slept a lot, but there's a lot more connections here, and I think the main ones are the connection between thyroid and what is called adrenal health. And adrenals actually regulate thyroid health. So if you look at your whole endocrine system, it's almost like you're building different floors of a high rise, where the base, the foundation of all endocrine health is blood sugar balance. If blood sugar is balanced and stable, then you will have stable adrenal function, which is cortisol's rhythm. If adrenals are stable, then thyroid hormones will be balanced. And if thyroid hormones are balanced, you'll have stable balance between estrogen and progesterone. So as you can see, you really have to go to the foundation rather than looking at just one aspect of thyroid. So it all begins from the same source. And thyroid issue, why is it caused by adrenal disruption, is what is called in Ayurveda high vata. When you say high vata dosha, it's about adrenal dysfunction. Now, how do you know if you have adrenal dysfunction? If you're prone to anxiety, if under stress you have the tendency for the heart to start beating very quickly, you're not able to calm down even after the stress is over. So you take a long time, and I can't tell you how many clients are now coming to me with their young kids put on anti-anxiety medication, and it's all about this inner balance.
Very interesting. Now I think we have a few minutes for questions from the audience. The book is full of tips and advice, very well written, very easy to understand, and Deepa is full of information, so please ask away. She's asking how to find a good doctor for Ayurvedic medicine.
I think there are so many wonderful. I think you just have to do your research, go probably meet a few people in your area and see whom you connect to, and whether they're open to answering questions. If you ask me about how do you find a practitioner, it's very difficult, but I would say the main thing is, are they making you feel fearful? Are they making you feel like you're an idiot who can't understand what they're explaining? So for me, it is that you empower the patient. So you don't hold the power and just secretly give them something which they don't understand why they're taking it. Instead, you give the power to the person. You teach them, why is this imbalance happening? What can you do about it? And give the power back to them, because they're the ones who are going to be taking care of their health. So anybody who's listening, anybody who's open, I think they are a great practitioner. I'm not an Ayurvedic Vaidya. No, I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner who works with herbs, not medication.
Can we have the next question, please?
Hi, Deepa. Yeah,
You'll have to be louder and keep the mic close to you.
Yeah. Why is it that some people are just able to fall asleep at any time, whatever, while others have this problem? I mean, why?
I think Ayurveda cracked this code 5,000 years ago because they spoke about the concept of Prakriti and Vikriti. So Prakriti is the unique body constitution which will never change. So you can tell somebody's Prakriti that is decided when the person is conceived, and that's never going to change. It's going to decide how will their body structure be, what will be their emotional tendencies, what are the illnesses they'll gravitate towards. So that is Prakriti. Now, it is always said that somebody who is Vata Prakriti will always have the tendency to toss and turn. They'll keep having restless nights. Somebody with Pitta will usually sleep, but if they go off balance, then they get into problems. Somebody with Kapha Prakriti will have no trouble sleeping. They'll go lie down and they'll be out. So that's Prakriti, but then remember that there's something called Vikriti, which is the present state of imbalance, where we could be Vata, Pitta, Prakriti, but today we could have imbalance in Vata, Pitta and Kapha. So it's always important to assess the person at that moment in time and gauge their Prakriti as well as their Vikriti, and then be able to make a protocol for that person based upon both of these.
Then in that case, supposing now when you are young, if you slept well. Yeah, sorry. If you slept well when you were young and all that, and when you become older, I'm talking from personal experience. My husband was somebody who would sleep very well when he was
Okay,
young.
so that's a great question, because Ayurveda also talks about how doshas are there in the different ages of our lives. So our childhood, where we are born till the time we reach our full growth, is a kapha phase. So everything is building. And the whole fertile period from when we've reached our full height to the time women menopause is a pitta phase. So we have the ability to create, have the ability to birth. But post-menopause in women and similar age in men is a vata phase. So no matter what is the prakriti, everyone's going to have the tendency for vata imbalance after menopause, because think of vata age as we are all actually prunes, plump and moist, and vata age is where we become a plum, and then we are becoming this dried up prune. So that's the vata age. So all of us in the post-menopausal years will have a tendency for sleep challenges, but that doesn't mean we have to just sit back and accept that. We just need to know that what do we need to do to keep it in the back of my mind. Okay, I'm in my vata age. I need to oil my body and not prevent myself from drying out. I need to have more healthy fat. So we need to, it's all about understanding where we are at that moment and using the right protocol to restore that balance.